Yeah. Whatever, Lisa.
You know, you want to start with like inpatient stuff first.
Right behind you.
Because qualified book is
I'm free to ordain EMS.
Oh, no.
We signed up for vacation,
Kind of like that.
and we're going. My son's graduating college next year, and so we're taking him down to Florida. But then a week later,
All right, we're going to go ahead and reconvene. I hope everybody had an opportunity to stretch your legs and clear your mind for a minute. We'll get it recongested with some stuff for a minute. And this will be the portion where we enter what we call the facilitated discussion. So I'll kind of lead that. But the goal of facilitated discussion is to start to talk about all the other things that will be going on during a real evacuation. So first off, I just want to give everybody a quick little mini round of applause. So a lot of teamwork in here, which is really great. Leanne, I don't know how everything went over there, but I'm sure folks came together and knocked things out as a team. So that's commendable. When everybody in here, and nobody in here had any we're like really had any attitudes or anything. Looks like everybody's enjoying the process as well, which is not always the case. I can say just from our own experience, when we did ours last year, our care manager and her crew went to town. They were the primary movers of this whole thing. And then at some point in time, people started walking and leaving the room, and one or two of them were on their own for a minute, but they powered through and they did outstanding. So you guys did really well here in the room. So teamwork was really good. So once you were presented with the scenario, I'm not going to pick on all the folks that were directly involved just yet. So I'm picking some of our tangential folks, some of the support services that are here. What's the first thing you thought about? What's the first thing you thought about when you got evacuated? Did you think about your role within EVS or anything like that? What did you think about?
Basically, with my role in EVS, I would be gathering up my staff to be able to start going to the floors or the areas where patients were at, to be able to assist with anything that the clinical departments were needing. So we'd be getting ready for just getting a head count, getting people in.
So you start thinking about what staff I can actually, a lot of your day-to-day jobs kind of go to the wayside at this point, but you want to make sure you're there. So the folks who provide patient care, what was the first thing that you thought about when you said, we would have to get folks out of here? What are some of the things that you thought about initially, given the scenario?
We can get out right now.
How quickly you can decompress the hospital. Who we can just, lollipop, go out and leave. Hopefully you're right outside, or whatever, that you can get off your hands right now, given the situation. I know every day we have a huddle at our hospital, and that's one of the things they look at. They look at what happened the previous day and who we were able to discharge before who we were able to discharge before this time, and they kind of track that, which I think is commendable. But in an emergency, some of those things kind of get accelerated. How would you guys accelerate that process here with regard to getting folks out? How would you get them out quicker than you would normally? And sometimes, at least from what I hear, they're like, well, I don't have a nurse to finish this, I don't have somebody to do this, or the hospitalist hasn't made it up to that level yet, or whatever it is. There's always some reason why we can't get everybody out quicker. How would you, in turn, get people out quicker than you normally would do on a day-to-day? What are some of the things that you would require to do that?
If we were only discharging 4 people, but probably put just one nurse in charge of discharges. Okay. That way she can just go through, get them done.
So you were only at the time. So what was the census here?
We started at 28 med-surg patients and 3 ICU patients. We determined that we could discharge 5 of the med-surg patients, which left us with, after discharges, 23 med-surg patients and 3 ICU patients.
And how many were in the ED?
1 a spider bite.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Lollipop.
Yep.
Okay.
It's our lucky day.
You lucked out. Leanne.
So we're on with you.
Okay, that's what I was about to call. Leanne, what about your folks? As far as what was your census at the time?
Our census? We had 4.
Yahtzee. There we go. Winner. Chicken dinner.
It was a little easier, so I had to throw some wrenches at them.
Okay. You can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball, right? Okay, so in that 4, were they all med-surg?
All med-surg. Our ER was empty here right now.
Okay. Well, good. What were some of the things, what were there, that whoever's there with you right now, if they want to speak on some of their initial thoughts and challenges? I know they probably say, well, I'm sure we can get resources. What are some of the initial thoughts when presented with the scenario?
Time to transfer and time to relocate.
Time to transfer and time to relocate.
Okay.
Thinking about EMS availability, bed availability. We were thinking north based on the other location of the damage.
Okay. What about the community in general? Did you think about the community given the scenario as well, and what your other hospitals could potentially be going through at the same time?
Yes, we talked about that. When we talked to EMS, we were kind of asking them about their secondary mutual aid because we're assuming in real life a lot of their rigs would be busy. So we kind of talked through that and some other options for transferring hospitals. And then we also thought about people who would start showing up to the ER and getting security put up and altering ER sites.
Exactly. I like to kind of refer to it as, we always look at hospitals as the place to go when there is an emergency, right? So let's say the communication isn't as good as it should be, maybe cell phones or coverage and stuff are kind of screwy, and the landlines, maybe their TVs even out because they don't have satellite cable. You have people still coming here for help, right? We're still going to have to manage that. And I would say you are a huge resource. Hospitals are a huge resource in an emergency, but when the hospitals have an emergency, you're a big liability because it takes a lot to get patients from point A to point B in a hurry. Okay, if you guys remember, you looked at the wildfires. You guys remember looking at those wildfires in California? I've seen nurse and patient care tech pushing a bed down the street. Yeah. You know, that's what you could be in the middle of it at this time. So, questions. How did you guys determine which facilities that you would call? Who's doing that? Who's primarily in charge here?
So we started closest. Obviously, we have a hospital a mile up the road. So we started closest and then kind of branched out. My sister was kind of assigned to call and started calling.
Okay. And what information, if you're thinking full real world piece, as far as what information were you asking on the other end? I mean, what kind of responses did you get back? I know there were some places that didn't have any beds, some places that had beds, but when you asked the question, what kind of reactions did you get on the other line?
Most of them were, I would say, all positive, really.
Okay.
Really clarifying it's just a drill.
Yeah. It's only drove. Are you sending me someone?
They're like, really? Like, no, really.
I heard you ask Lisa a couple times, okay, you have those beds available, do you have staffing available? You were also asking kind of those other pieces of the conditions.
Very important.
I was also wondering too, thankfully we were able, as we went through the concentric circles, we were able to find enough facilities with beds open to place our patients, but you never know, right? And so, if we're talking to Alt Memorial and they say they have no med-surg beds available, but we're really not able to go a whole lot of other places, at what point can we start a discussion with them around, okay, what is your surge plan? What is your surge, like how do you, outside of just normal operations, do you have surge capability where you can either double up or you've got, a big room that we can start to get some patients depending on circumstances.
Okay. Did you get any questions back? Like were there any special care questions that would need to be asked or answered at that point in time?
Well, no, because they told them they were just general med-surg, so not anything. It was like no freight care, no.
Do we
Is that
have
what you mean, or?
Yeah, well, yeah. And we have any ICU? We had 3. Okay, we had 3. And was there anyone there that I don't know if there's different levels and anything of ICU. Some
He's a non-clinician.
Yeah, so I'm non-clinical. So join the club, right? Yeah. Did any of those conversations had to happen at all?
No. They're all pretty like the same standards, really. I think they're all pretty similar.
We wouldn't have like a balloon pump here anyway, so that wouldn't be something that we would have to.
Because we discussed that, I think,
Yeah.
earlier. We're gonna talk transportation here in a second. Leanne, did you guys have any, conversations with regard, like I said, no, it was only 4, but, was anybody like, yeah, no, we can or we can't do this, and were there any special circumstances, or was it just pretty, straightforward for you guys?
It went pretty straightforward. We did talk around, if it weren't so straightforward, but we had plenty of beds available north. They did ask if there was any special medical scenarios, like if there was anything like that, but.
Gotcha. What was the primary method of communication for you folks over there with regard to calling other facilities? What was your primary method of communication?
The phone, landline.
So I know we ran into a situation here where we actually had to transition. You want to talk about that as far as radio?
Well, and that's just it. I'm not in my element, so if a real emergency, if we were really evacuating, I would probably be downstairs. But we couldn't get a hold of Boyd, and really we couldn't get a hold of Jerseyville for a long time either. And he suggested what other way? And obviously we do have a radio down there, and I got them immediately. So that is definitely the easier way, I think, to communicate.
Okay. So yeah, if you guys didn't overcome, but if you had your radio, maybe if you're around the radio, you probably would have heard that traffic. But yes, we made an ED to ED call between the 2 hospitals and got somebody right on the horn, which was great. And it's not a Tuesday when you're normally doing the test, which is even better. It was 5 minutes. So nobody was waiting on it or expecting it. They just were ready. Which is good. That was important, right?
Boyd.
And they said how many beds they had?
I didn't write it down.
Boyd is
14.
I think 14, yeah.
I'm surprised there's 14 beds over there. All right. Let's see. For some facilities, let's see. Okay, so when you guys were, we talked about concentric circles and concentric rings, basically saying let's go closest and then branch out. Okay, great potential to do that, but I know we reached out kind of what do you have available and your plan. Here's our list of folks we're going to call. What do you have available now? What other tools do you potentially have to help you to at least gather
that information?
What's that?
How to gather that information? Well, is there some sort of
The EMR board, but again, it's not updated until 10 a.m. So to be honest, I don't know if I really trust it. I think making that phone call.
Oh, definitely. You definitely want to make a phone call.
But yeah, the EMR board is supposed to be updated by 10 a.m. every day to show bed availability.
So we could have at least looked at what update we have there. I mean, maybe this is starting at 11 o'clock. Who knows what time it is? But to start there in terms of prioritizing our phone calls, because if the latest update says that Alton Memorial is completely full, but yet Jerseyville has 15 open, well, let's just call Jerseyville quickly. Just, you know what I mean? Just to kind of eventually to get down the list.
What other information can you glean from that system as well, other than bed availability?
Well, there's other disasters going on in the area.
Because we looked, we had a couple with EDs were on bypass.
Right.
Did one who was on bypass. Probably should be on quote unquote bypass, but they were on bypass. When we started the exercise, there were 193 beds available across the region, just in that region. Well, at least in region 4.
According to EMR.
According to EMR. And most folks had already had updated for the day. Some updated at midnight, listenable after midnight, 10 minutes after midnight. And then some had updated just a little bit before we started. And I will always say, it's not the source, but it is a source. So when you kind of can look, well, it looks like today, right now, we may be here, so that's a good thing. But if you go in there and look, and it's like, wow, there's only, across the entire region, there's only 50 med-surg beds instead of 100 and something. You really, may say, oh, wow, we're probably going to definitely have to be reaching further out. So to go to what you said, your concentric, what can you do? And sometimes it may be, it may help the fact that you could reach a little further out to areas that are less stressed at the time than you might be. So we'll get to some of that when we talk about
Right, especially if we're talking about an earthquake and that is here and, you know.
correct. So just some things. I guess when you get that, right, we'll kind of talk about that.
That EMR board, I've tried to get it on my phone before, and it doesn't work very well. Do you guys find the same problem?
When you say it doesn't work very well, what's the problem you have?
Like, I can't see a lot of information on it.
We can take a look for you, but you should be able to see the status for
The
it.
same as everything else.
Pretty much.
Yeah, it's very similar. It won't be identical, but it'll be pretty close.
Anybody have anything else with regard to bed placement? We didn't have it because right now we didn't have any really circumstances. Do we have any psych
We didn't
patients?
have any psych patients. I was gonna say,
You better knock on some wood.
sorry.
Normally we do.
Well, that's because so what would we do with, you've got a psych patient downstairs or two waiting to be placed? Talk through that.
Well, honestly, if AMH is not busy and I can't get an accepting facility, because you know I won't be able to, like, I would see if their ER would accept them, because they have to be watched, so ER to ER transfer.
And I would, in a real emergency, you would get that support. I don't think anybody's gonna be like, oh no, we can't do this or whatever. But what about as far as staffing and stuff like that for that? Let's say they say you can send somebody, but they need a sitter and you're gonna have to provide a sitter. Those things that you feel like you could do potentially in that.
Especially this morning.
Huh?
This morning for sure.
Okay. Today, yeah, you can do it, right? Today.
Well, if we're evacuating, eventually we're gonna have staffing available.
And Leanne, I take it you guys didn't have any psych patients?
No, at this point we had no psych patients, although they recently had to work through a code yellow with the local detention facility. So they're kind of well versed in that, the patients that need monitoring.
Okay. Let's see. So let's talk transportation. Let's talk about transportation. How'd that go for you guys here? How did transportation go? Finding available ambulance services and ALS versus BLS transport, et cetera. How'd that go?
I think it went fairly well. We only actually had one provider that had no units built. Everybody else at least seemed at least was available with one unit. Most of them have two.
So with regard, you had how many total was it? 20?
We ended up getting 14 rigs available, and then we had a van that can take 14, and then another van that could take 3 with a wheelchair. So
And what service? Do you know what service?
the vans were, one was from Eunice Smith Nursing Home, which is down the road, and then one is from Rosewood, which is another nursing area, and then the other agencies were Lifestar, Jerseyville, AFD, Edwardsville, Granite City, Maryville, Collinsville, Staunton, and Abbott.
So that's a pretty wide range.
I don't think, like in a real life scenario, and I wouldn't think that many rigs will be available, because I think they're gonna be responding to a lot more emergencies in their communities.
Potentially, you get absorbed somewhere else.
That would be a huge issue.
But that 911 volume, even though the 911 volume probably increases, at that point, whoever your AHJ, your authority having jurisdiction, is going to have to say, all right, these are where we need to apply the resources. So for some of those municipal areas, they would realign those resources. So some things are just going to have to be delayed in a large scale emergency, because you're basically you become low density, high demand assets. You don't have 1 billion ambulances, so definitely mutual aid and more ambulance services coming in. Okay.
But where would we be on that list, since we're here and we have people who take care of them?
So if you were to think about this in a large scale, and an earthquake that's causing hospitals to evacuate is a big deal, right? You'd be fairly high high. You'd be fairly high on that priority. Okay? Outside of responding services that would be non-transport agencies, all your fire, because I think we talked to one gentleman as far as trying to have fire department kind of help you guys out with your folks in the parking lot and triage and maybe helping manage the incident. A lot of that's going to be absorbed, so you're going to be quasi on your own. Again, like I said, nurse and PCT pushing a bed over to a staging area while they wait, those type of things. But you'd be fairly high because you guys have patients that are already, in a compromised state. So it really goes to the point of being able to decompress and prioritize who you really want to move. So some of these folks might not move for hours. And you know what I'm saying? They may be out wherever your staging area is for very extended duration before you had somewhere to get to actually place them or move to a temporary holding area at a local school. I don't know what your local plans say, but that would be a big coordinated effort with your EMAs and everything else. Say, hey, this is where we're going to keep the population. So you might not even be, when they get picked up, they might not even be getting picked up from right here at the point in time with final destination. So, who was your, I'm going to go over to the folks in Carlinville. Who was the first transport agency that you contacted and why?
The first people we contacted was the Gillespie-Benel Area Ambulance Service because they are our main transporter of patients right now. So they're the local.
Okay, they're local. Do you guys have like an established contract with them for transfer of patients? Or MOA,
MOU.
For transport of patients in a disaster at all?
I believe so, yes. MOU.
The MOU.
Did you catch that, Phil?
Yep, I did. And I know over here we
So
said.
they also, since we were looking at what the community impact was, they also discussed with the ambulance service where they would be tapping from if all the current resources were utilized.
And in that search for transportation agencies, did you guys strictly just go off of what you use day to day and you're normally used to using? Or did you leverage any of your other, when I say other resources, your other resource hospitals and the folks that are around you to help in that process? Anybody look to call out to another resource hospital so they could kind of, I don't want to say not manage it for you, but assist in helping with that? Because I would say, I'll kind of put in this context. If this is going on, me as the RHCC, all your resource hospitals will be available. And, I would try to be telling you, hey, who's closest for you guys? Who's the closest resource hospital here? Well, obviously it's all, but, and whoever the next closest, and have them trying to work with whomever you have doing most of that coordinating. If that's going to be you, then them saying, hey, I can get this many more ambulances, this many more ambulances. Because they're going to know their systems, best they can. They're going to know that they never try to apply those things. Did anybody think about calling the other resource hospitals other than the ambulances straight away? No.
Well, we call
So
it.
we tried up here to call the RHCC and we got a reporting.
Currently out of the office for an extra.
It didn't ring. It did not ring on my cell phone. So I'm sorry.
When you told you were off, we just kind of looked at you guys off.
Yeah, no. We totally are. So yeah, I'm just wondering if you called Anderson directly or.
I thought Anderson was on one.
No, Anderson did play.
We called Springfield, which is normally who we call a Memorial Hospital in Springfield and also St. John's Hospital in Springfield. But I would imagine we would also reach out to other more local hospitals too if they weren't able to take our patients. Maybe like St. Francis Hospital in Litchfield, possibly Hillsborough
Hospital.
Yeah.
So in a real exercise, are you then kind of acting from a regional perspective versus a facility perspective? Like, are you going to be available at a regional level?
Yes.
That we would be able to contact you and be in coordination? And we did actually you told us 2 facilities.
Memorial East and Main.
Yeah, and Anderson, I thought you said it's kind of like going to your backup.
That's our backup.
There are
We
backups.
avoided them.
So we avoided them, but in a real life, we can contact you, and then we can be kind of, obviously, you're aware of what's going on across.
Correct. Yeah, and this, while I won't be able to totally direct everything, my goal at that point in time is not to track every patient for you because I wouldn't be able to do that. But is to be able to say, hey, I found another bed here. We've got another bed here. You know, to continue to work that piece so you can kind of see. As soon as this bridge is now open and these folks are able to be able to transport across to our St. Louis partners.
So I'd definitely be in communication with you.
Most definitely. We will set up a small command center, you know, as best we can. And I'll use my EMS system coordinator, Mike Gilbert, and Jay will get pulled over. I'll use all my Leanne. We'll pull the whole team together to make sure that we can support you guys. That goal is just to get more and more assets your way. You know, try to get make sure we can get the ambuses off Scott Air Force Base licensed and blessed to get up here and be able to take folks. You know, take 14 folks. You know, that actually need to be in bed at one time, you know, doing that type of stuff. So in this regard, how many? You know, I think I heard a little bit of conversation about the back and forth use of ambulance. Ambulance is going to go, it's going to come back. About how many times do you think? I mean, we had what? How many times do you think we would have had to do that?
Well, we actually assumed that one trip per.
So you said kind of a 1-for-1.
If we got all of those ambulances, 14? If we got all 14, we should be able to take care of most patients. I mean, if they would have to go back into staging, then at least we had that option.
All right, so let's move over to patient tracking and public communication. Where's my PIO at? Right there. All right. So what are you doing, PIO? Public Information Officer.
So I have, this is a drill, I've already contacted my OSF resources that are supporting me, social media wise, that type of thing. And I've already gotten back responses from them, as well as I have, I haven't sent it, but I do have it ready to go. A request out to Amy Yeager, Madison County Health Department. There's a whole bank of resources for me there as well. And then I have news releases ready to go to all of our papers locally and radio stations. What I would then take, you know, from Sister, the first thing is just that we are not, because of this earthquake, we are not accepting new patients. Basically what it said, I have templates for every scenario. Right, and so, but then as I get information from Sister, I will feed that to the community. So me and just thinking about this, you know, I know we have families with, you know, roughly, you know, I don't know, 20 or so families that are perhaps, you know, we've got nurses working and calling to get some discharge, but we have families that have heard there's an earthquake, they felt the earthquake, they know their loved one's here. They're calling, they're asking for information, and so I need to be able to get information together and be able to talk to those families as well if needed. And if needed, not knowing what the damage might be, I would be able to set up a separate tent, or not a tent, but a separate table or place where I could, if I've got media coming in, which hopefully not, I'm asking them not to come here. If they show up, I'm addressing it from there, so they're not, you know, coming in the hospital and trying to get information that way.
They will, first thing they're going to do is go to where all the death instructions is.
Right.
This building is no longer here, but then after that, when they find out that, oh my gosh, it's evacuating, that's a movie for them.
They're going to come here.
They're going to come.
So I want to try and be, you know, try and get them before they get to the door. In my training, we've had scenarios of having, you know, a tent or table set up outside the hospital and being able to communicate, stop them at the door, and then yet I'm communicating with Sister during that time and trying to get my releases and my information using my phone, my computer, depending on what I have access to, depending on what's available to me as far as, you know, internet outages or what for that type of thing.
So folks in Carlinville, what's kind of your, you know, public information, you know, process there when you can no longer take patients, accept patients? How do you broadcast that out to your community? You know, do not come here. We are currently unavailable.
We discussed calling, notifying EMS first of all, and then also the notifying like WSMI, local radio stations, so that they could broadcast over the air that we are diverting our care to St. Mary's and Simon Church. Our emergency service would be transferred, relocated to that area.
Okay. So, have you guys done other things like that? Maybe for special events planning. Maybe you had something going on. I always like to use those as a good idea. You know, we have a, I won't say bake sale, but we do the kids thing. You know, we have a like a little expo that we do.
We also use social media if possible.
I know we always use a lot of social media, but it's always good to have those good relationships with news, you know, print media and television media, because again, you're a great resource, but when you are a liability, you do not want more people coming here because that's going to just slow you down. Medical records. Let's discuss medical records. All right, what system do you guys use here? Epic. Does that make everyone happy? I'm just asking the question. We're going to be transitioning to Epic over the next 2 years.
It'll be okay.
Yeah, pray for us. Pray for us. You'll make it. Yeah, we got a lot of people going a lot of different ways. How are you transferring your medical records, your medical patient information?
Do we even have IT? I mean,
I'll say yeah, you got IT. I'll say your IT's, you know, hit and miss. Sometimes you got, sometimes don't. It's earthquake. We'll see. Generators are working, but how are you guys transferring? You got to go to say 13 different locations, and you got to take that information with you.
You're sending the people that don't have Epic. Let's do that.
Yeah, you come into Memorial Hospital.
Well, no, we got patient track of it.
So right now we print already. Anytime we transfer, we print the entire chart and send it with the patient. That would change the process.
What if you don't have printing capability at that point? When you're in
We have downtime forms.
Okay.
So we would use the downtime forms to fill out and send to the patient.
Time that you would do, I hate to say day to day, but when you do just your downtime process, how that information packaged, so to speak. Is it like in a, I want you thinking evacuation. Remember we was talking about how you're not just going to be going from the ED door out or wherever you traditionally, you may be going out the back door, the side door, and then they may be out in the parking lot for the next 5 hours until you do this, maybe at 10. And you have weather to deal with while you're out there. And it's, so let's say it's rainy. How is that information packaged and is it going to survive that transport? Is it in a waterproof pack?
You can get Ziploc bags. Right now, we just put it in a
belonging bag,
envelope.
and then put it in a patient belonging bag so that it stays dry. Patient sticker.
Just things to think about. You know, just want to put those out there that, you know, when you're in a disaster, Murphy's Law will rear its.
I found Murphy was an optimist.
It can go wrong, it will go wrong. And you're like, well, I can still read the doctor's signature, I guess. I don't know, you know, I don't know. How the folks over at Collinville doing that? Are you getting a similar process, just downtime forms if you don't have whatever electronic health record or anything going on?
We would go to paper here. I didn't hear all the questions for electronic health record, but we would go to paper here if our EHR was down.
Okay, yeah, and the follow-up question to that was is that in some form of waterproof? Because in case you had the stage folks that may get rained on, or you're in the process of that,
Sprinklers are going off.
or what have you. Yeah, that's you're in a football field, and all the sprinklers are golf
Sprinklers in the building are going off.
That's another good point that could be happening, especially if it's a fire somewhere. Do you guys put any type of waterproof packaging to make sure it's?
We'll get Ziploc baggies from like gallon bags from our purchasing department, or if we had like the plastic plate protectors, we could maybe slide them in there. Probably the baggie would be quicker and easier, but yeah.
The reason I asked, I'm kind of prodding at these questions, is that we always will have the capability to do something. So like say, it was raining, and somebody's going to say, oh, we can do this. But if you prepare for the situation prior to it, so you say, when we build our patient package, patient information package, it will survive this, that, and the third when we go out, when we go from point A to point B. So you don't have to think about it later. So it's established in this fashion. It has a lanyard, so it goes around the patient's neck or on the wrist, or so it never gets separated from the patient, those type of things. Because you'll be surprised that in evacuation bureau how some of that paperwork can and will just get swept around. Accidentally, doesn't mean it happened, but it will. So securing it with the patient and make sure that it's in some form of, I would say, waterproof.
And there's pre-built packages that you can get that actually, we've got some of them that use like a Tyvek, like house wrap, the same stuff that's under your siding. That's what the pouches are made out of. They've got a lanyard, so it's like a triage tag hanging on their neck. It goes with them.
Yeah. And it has their medications and all this stuff. Yeah. So, how do you guys manage your medications like that? Do you guys like have? I'm trying to think what they have like a. I'm trying to remember what they call it. But how are you managing those medications? Who's the pharmacy? Where's pharmacy? Pharmacy was here. But in those durations, again, somebody's outside and maybe they receive medications on a routine time. They have an IV that's on there. You're going to be here for 5 or 6 hours. How are we handling those medications?
A lot of it's going to be clinical judgment by that nurse caring for that patient. I mean, if I've got a low pressure PO due, I'm not going to be really concerned about that right now. Now if I have somebody that's on a leave-of-bed drip, in the ICU and titrating their pressure, then obviously those patients are going to take priority. But really your day-to-day stuff, so what if they miss an antibiotic dose or whatever, that kind of stuff's
So
going to
you're saying there's kind of levels to it?
Yeah, there's levels to what we're actually going to be able to perform. I mean, if they're out in our, lobby for 5 to 6 hours, yeah, we can transport medications with them, but can they do without it? Probably. Not me.
And the folks that you do discharge, does that kind of go on? If they have do they leave with a script, or do they leave with medications in hand, or do they go CVS whenever they get a chance? Is that what nobody will probably know that? At-risk populations. Did we have any at-risk populations in here? When I say at-risk populations, I'm talking about folks with some form of
Functional access needs.
Yeah, physical or mental disability, children that you normally don't care for at the time, anything like that. Do we have anybody like that? And can you readily identify those folks quickly if need be?
We don't have inpatient feeds anymore. So the only piece
And it would be the ED somewhere. Do you, by chance, did you guys, I suppose to call them though, did you guys have any special needs or functional access needs, folks that needed transport? Carlinville, or once, twice? Yeah.
Sorry, Phil, did you have a question? We were discussing something offline here.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Did you guys have any folks with any functional access needs, special, outside of their primary diagnosis? Anybody mental, physical disabilities, pediatric?
No, at this time we had no adverse populations up here with the current status.
How about, do you guys have an ability to? I'm just going off of last year's, some of the things that we talked about last year. Bariatric patients. Did you have any bariatric patients? And
at this time we have in the past. And they did identify bariatric capability with EMS as well.
That's something that we ran into last year, a kind of big deal that we didn't have if we had a really high census, let's say we had, we're at 180 or 185. We didn't have a method or mechanism to rapidly identify if we have bariatric patients or not, because you say, oh yeah, you can sure ALS. Oh, can't. Sorry, can't move this gentleman on this day because the stretcher is not capable or have you. We had the fortunate and unfortunate incident where we assisted in moving a 1,500 or so pound patient into our hospital and had to move him out. So we had to think about all of these things because there wasn't a bed, wasn't a stretcher that would hold his weight. Those resources are very small, just, in general. So I think we had, 2 bariatric capable that still couldn't transport this gentleman, but we only had 2 bariatric ambulances. One each other? Yeah, one in Missouri and one, that's all we had.
Sure.
So that could be a real case of what do we do now? What's the second, third, fourth level of effects, and how do we get him or her to a safe location? At that point in time, it's really hard to. So
Lily, there you are. We lost you.
okay. Other questions? I think we've answered.
So when you send the patient out and the family member calls and says, where did my family member go? How are you tracking that? How do you know where you sent them?
Well, I would think in terms of, the tracking forms that we have here are simply what's available and are we finding placement. But if we were actually doing patient level discussions, I would think we would have very good tracking forms to say, this is the patient, this is the condition, this is where they came from, here's who we talked to, here's where they're going, time, like we're going to have to put up a system where we are.
Like the truck number.
Absolutely, absolutely, like all those details as much as possible.
And we saw a lot of that during the hurricane deployments where patients would literally get lost in translation. You don't know where they went or who took them.
Yeah. And it seems like it's like something that's
common sense.
Yeah, we do this every day. We know we just sent such and such to Barnes because they go to Barnes or the specialist was at Barnes. We know that this is what we do day to day. But once you get, I always say, when you put a military background, when you put a gas mask on and you got to protect yourself, your IQ drops just a little bit, right? It's just now in an emergency, you become very mentally acute. You're like, you see everything going on, but there comes a point in time where that information is overloaded, and all of a sudden, small things start to slip away. Some of the things that you practice and you just do day to day begin to slip away. So, what I've noticed, I would say, in the past, and even some of the drills that we've done, is that when that's occurring, it's always great to have whatever the system that you use to track patients, whatever, I'm going to call it the disaster version of that is, whether that is a board with pinstripes on it that says, room 116, Jane Doe is now at point B, point C, has now made it to this location. Everybody can see that. Those rudimentary things become really important in the end, because what we will tend to do, because this doesn't happen all the time, and nobody can practice an evacuation all the time. It takes a lot. But what we do is we do what we do day to day. And what we do day to day is we may have a system of records that is up and operational. What I would ask is that when you do practice your evacuation exercises, and even when it's a tabletop, that you bring those on chalkboards, but dry erase boards and other things that you have, and try to stay off of doing things on your phone and or computer that would, anything that would resemble what you would do day to day. Make your disaster version of that process something that, I won't say it's infallible, but as sound as possible, that you can always fall back to. Because you'll always be able to do what you can do day to day. You'll always be able to go and get that knocked out. Oh, I put it in here, and then that goes to here. When there's an earthquake, none of that is going to exist. Or if there was a tornado, that's job. None of that existed. It had zero power. They moved the hospital 6 feet off its foundation. There's no power. There's no nothing. What do we have to do this? They were operating off of cell phones, laptops while they had power, so they got generators, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So come up with whatever that process is so you don't miss out on it. What are you guys doing with, while this is an evacuation, we did talk about folks coming to you. The the PIO is not doing her job right now. Folks are coming here regardless. You do a great job. But folks are coming here regardless, okay? Just so happens some children show up here. Just kids. Some of them small, minor injuries. Some of them no injuries. What's your plan? Deal with 9-year-old.
You mean, are they coming in for treatment?
They're coming here because their house is gone and they know there's a hospital right here.
We're on lockdown because we have security at the door.
Yep. And this 9-year-old coming to you like, I need help. What are you doing?
Well, we've got a whole HR labor pool that's starting to build up. People are coming in, and so we open a little daycare.
Okay.
Somebody is in charge of the kiddos. I mean, at first you just have to kind of like, put some people in place, and then as time goes on, if you can understand identity and start to work through, the right location for these people and connecting them with people that are, the rightful people in their lives, obviously, then.
Because during that evacuation, during your evacuation, say you had someone coming out of surgery, didn't make it, or somebody came in to the ED, mom, father, 2 kids, parents pass away, you still got 2 kids and you're in the middle of this. Now let's say you have your mini daycare. What are your plans to deal with that mini daycare, especially in the guys that you are trying to move them out? You can't stay here. So
One option is that we have a daycare right at the bottom of the hill. So, we can move that location down there depending on the state of that facility, because they're all equipped with all the child stuff down there. So that's one option, if that's a possibility, depending on what the status is. I mean, if this building is, obviously we need to, I don't know what the status is in terms of, is there a room that's safe for a little while until we identify or not, or do we?
You may or may not. I mean, it could be a mixed bag, but the fire department said it's not safe. You can't, he's like, nobody else can come in.
We have a disaster tent as well, and we can use that. You can put heat into it and everything like that, so we can put that out there and put them in there as well.
How are you going to reunify them? I mean, do you have a pediatric reunification plan? Do you have a set policy and procedure on how you're going to take little Bobby and figure out if Daddy is actually supposed to have
That's
custody
an
or not?
REOP. We have a figure, they come in, take a picture of the parent, take a picture of the vehicle, license, we do the whole thing. We have that in our plan.
So I would say that there are a lot of tentacles that go along with Bobby or Jane, who's 9 years old without parents. To a certain, were they here when you accepted them and the parent passed away or whatever, or they just showed up to your property? And where does your legal, moral, ethical grounds lie? The disaster it's mixed. It's very mixed. There is no one right answer. There is no one right answer. But when you are doing this plan, always try to incorporate the missing kid or the geriatric patient who just wandered upon and maybe they have Alzheimer's or maybe not, but they're here. What am I to do with these people? It sounds great that sometimes we turn them over to we turn over Belleville PD.
Yeah, I was going to say, what about the police?
That sounds great. So the police are now going through every neighborhood with their siren, with their bullhorn on, going, if you're here, we need to evacuate here. They're helping with evacuations for other areas.
And odds are they're telling them to the hospital, even though you told them not to.
You told them not to come here. Yeah. So those type of things would be going on. For the folks at Carlsville, do you guys have a pediatric, I'll just say like reunification plan or anything like that? If you are stuck with some kids without parents that either walked there or came with their parents and their parents maybe passed away in your care.
Cancer. No one wants to ever hear it.
That could have sounded almost like me.
I did actually at first.
Ready this afternoon.
Leanne there. Yep.
Sorry, we were discussing reunification and stat bans.
Oh, great. So we'd like to hear some of your discussion with that.
So we were just looking at their triage checks. Pediatrics are not a big deal up here so much because they don't do a lot of pediatric care. But we took that to, the other vulnerable population, elderly, same type situation. So we were discussing, the use of like mobile for the EM resource And the ability to scan those and set up reunification and track that patient to whatever site they get sent to, whether it's the alternate emergency care site or whether it's just a simply holding site.
Okay, and do you guys, and I didn't catch that part earlier, do you guys have a plan already established for dealing with, let's say, pediatrics or geriatric patients that require some form of guidance or, they need a parent and or guardian that are in your care?
That we have to have one staff member with every patient that's being either discharged or evacuated or transferred.
Okay. Now, if we go back and look, we use Katrina. I'd probably say that's probably the worst example. Or I won't say probably the worst example would be another earthquake. Let's use Haiti. We had a lot of folks go down there, had a lot of kids and stuff like that. What happened after all of everybody? Everything happened, or even use down the southern border where we have those areas where we had those migrants that were coming through. They were coming from Honduras and were coming up, and then they set up established camps. They always segregated the kids. Same thing in Haiti. They segregated kids. Same thing, Katrina. They segregated kids. 3 months later, what do you hear about those kids? 5 months later, a year. Well, not even that they're still there, but they're cases. Yeah, you have a lot of things that were surrounding those children, whether that's, I hate to even say it, child molestation and or anything else, any other type of abuse that goes on. Do you guys do any vetting at all of any of the folks that you may choose to say, hey, Gary, I need you to watch these 9 kids? Is Gary vetted? Or Phil, I need you to watch those 9 kids?
We have a background check, we have the whole 9 yards. So everybody, all employees, especially security, for example, is vetted and checked out. So anybody watching that child will be checked out.
So again, my recommendation is that, again, one of those things on the forward end of planning is that you identify some folks, even if those are spouses that may run a private daycare or are licensed daycare professionals that would volunteer those services for you in a time of emergency, and that they're vetted previous. So now you can call upon, all right, this is our list of 10 folks that said, I watched kids ages 2 to 15. I got it. I'll do it. We'll do it in a disaster. Just show me where to be. And then vet them then. Last thing you want to do is that in that time to say, all right, for the next two days while we figure this out, we're gonna pick Phil. Okay, I'll do it. And Phil's not a nice guy. It's not this Phil, it's some other Phil. So who's some other Phil? So, okay. So now I just want to open it up. So I want to open it up because I'm sure there's things that you guys thought about that aren't in the facilitate discussion piece, and maybe we'll throw a few things in as well. But things that you noticed once you had the scenario. I didn't think about this. Once maybe you had a conversation about it amongst yourselves. What are some things that you maybe identified during this time frame?
Sister named the scribe.
Absolutely.
As the instant commander, she was the one writing everything down. But I think in a true disaster, that's not going to be the case. She's going to need somebody that's taking really big notes.
That's a great point because that's very important.
I was thinking about that through the course of this. You told us from the very beginning, this is all you're doing. Our brains immediately went to a lot of other stuff, mine too, but that's why we kind of clarified early on, this is all we're doing. We're not actually doing a full-scale disaster drill right now. Because if that were the case, you're absolutely right. We'd be like, okay, this team is going to take care of EMS communication. This team is going to take care of calling hospitals, and you're just going to have to assign who's tracking what in each of those different areas, because there's going to be a ton of other stuff going on in terms of, all of these other topics that you're going to have to be using the command structure to make sure all of these areas are covered. So this was a very kind of a limited moment, and that's and I thought about it halfway through. I'm like, well, maybe I should just hand this off. But I think we were in the middle of it, so we just went in. But
what else? What other things to think about? Scribe, need a scribe. Okay, always good. Log events, taking all that down as well.
Given the scenario we had, what I found is we started close and then fanned out. But given the magnitude of an earthquake that's going to actually cause structural damage to the building, that's going to be so widespread that probably almost every one of the EMS providers that we contacted are going to be unavailable. So we need to look outside the box and probably go even further out in Collinsville, St. Clair County, because they're probably going to be just as busy. So we're going to be looking at tertiary areas and quaternary areas that, we're going to have to reach out to that may not be as damaged.
But yeah, it's a good point. They may be overwhelmed. If you're evacuating here because you have structural damage, then there's probably a lot of other places that are having schools. School could have been in session. I don't know how big the high school is or whatever. There's damage there.
Maybe relocating people outside the facility for hours until we can get transport here.
Yep. Oh yeah.
I heard the comment made about I need to get phone numbers, have them in my phone. This is the time we figure out who do we not know how to reach.
Yep.
I will toss out a tidbit on EM Resource. If you go to the facility at the bottom, anybody that has a login, it has their phone number. So if you can't get hold of whoever you're looking for, just start dialing that. Pick one, dial until you get somebody that can give you what you want.
We do have a paper log, and I'm an old person. So I go by paper, but yeah, I just think it's another resource. Just make sure you have it on paper as well.
Agreed, yeah. And then the whole radios thing. You guys should have a handheld radio.
Oh no, we got a dozen handheld radios.
On smartphone?
Yeah. No, not for those. For our internal radios.
Right, I'm referring to this. You should have a smartphone.
We got 2 of those.
Right, yeah. These are your saving grace when it comes to reaching out.
Do you have one of those in the ED?
No, they all have, they
I have
have
a
a base
base
station.
But I have two of those in my
handheld.
The first concern that came to me was if this happens at 2 a.m.
That's what I was.
All of this room, short of a house supervisor and Sister Novice radio. Many coming from across the river or coming from areas that couldn't be here. So the communication, the possibility of many of us even getting here could be a concern.
It'd be a big concern. I'll tell you right now, we when the train derailed just in Belleville, that was actually been way worse. But when that was at 2 a.m. When I get the phone call. Your administrator on call gets in. You got administrator on call, house soup, and me. You don't have the full team. You may have some maybe some EVS support, and we've got ED charge and very limited resources at that point in time. And to your point, are folks going to even be able to make it in or all those type of things? So I won't say always, we like to practice with the A team. And when I say B team, I don't mean that they're less qualified or anything like that. They're just smaller. The B team is like your shells of the A team. All right, this is what we got enough to get through tonight. Okay. You may need to work remotely, depending on the type of disaster.
Initially at night, we got house soup, security. That's about it. We don't have a whole lot here. Yeah.
The other thing to consider is if this happens, this isn't going to be, okay, well, we moved them all, we're done. You're still going to continue. Your operational period is not over, and it's going to continue again. And y'all can't keep doing it. Someone has to take over for you so you can relax and rest and decompress.
It's one of the most important things in incident management is understanding, using true ICS terms, what operational periods really mean and your resources. Because if you were to come in here and notice it and understand that this is a multi-hour, multi-day incident, the worst thing you can do is throw everybody in the same pool all day. And then when you're at hour 10, go, all right, you need to go get some sleep. You need to work really hard, press, get a plan in the first 2 hours, 3 hours. Release those that you don't need and say, hey, I'm going to need you to come back here at 2 in the morning. Start over. So that is one of the key principles when working any incident that lasts, any multi-day incident, is manpower and resource availability and sustaining it. You would also want to look, when we have MOUs with the region, this is where you want to reach out to your regional partners and say, hey, you spare a couple people to fill in our incident command to help this. I see somebody, I need a nurse, I need somebody who's, I may need some extra security folks, or or what have you. Because in a real disaster, you're going to need to lean on those folks. You want people who speak kind of the same language. They may not know the lay of the land as well as you do, but they will get in where they fit in.
We have MOUs with the police department for cadets and things like that.
Yeah. All of those things are great.
That's some things we do for security.
There's lots of things, but yeah, you don't want to burn your manpower. Really. You don't want to do that. How about you guys over Collinville as far as any random thoughts that pop in your head during the time frame? Like, you know what, we never thought of this during the evacuation.
Maybe the health care for our employees, for not health care, child care for hospital employees, if they need someone to child care, that kind of thing, reaching out to the community, church members or neighbors or families who could watch children, if staff was willing to come in here to help with the disaster or evacuation until they were able to get home with their families or something like that. I'm not sure if we've talked about that before.
Okay. Yeah, I know we have it in our plans, and we talk about establishing pretty much a daycare for staff members to stay extra time. And do you guys? When we joined with BJC, we had something that we call stay pay. That hey, I need you here for extended shifts. Maybe 24/7. We'll pay for you to sleep here during the night if if this is something extended. We normally do that during when it's super bad snow. If that we do stuff like that. Evacuation may be a little different because you can't stay here. But do you have, if you want to keep people close by, are there close by maybe hotels or places to where you can send folks and say, because they maybe live 20, 30 minutes away?
Yeah, we have MOUs with Comfort Inn.
Good. Yeah. Those are great things that you always want to check up on. People leave and then come back and, we have this one.
Yeah, we do have.
Are they not for room space, or are they just basically contracted rates, or what are they?
Contracted rates and rooms. So, yeah.
That's good.
So we currently don't have MOUs with our local hotels. We do have a close bond with one of the owners of a local hotel that we probably use.
We have Lake Williamson, a Christian center out about 3 miles from town that has probably 300 or 400 beds. I'm sure we have MOU with them. We could utilize them. They have kitchen facilities. It's a pretty unique facility. They would help us out too.
Yes. Now, I guess part of the last part that I will ask about as far as patient care is regarding, do you guys have an alternate care site plan? And what resources, if you do, what resources do you have to support alternate care sites?
We do have
Lake Williamson is one of them that Randall just mentioned, and with all those availabilities there. And then we also have a local church, St. Mary Simon Church here in town. And they took it so far as they were already examining the IT capability. Since we had a little more time, they started working through, do they have Wi-Fi? What would we do if we had to set up hotspots? What would we do if we don't have internet coverage at that time or cell phone coverage? They were really looking at what's available to them should they have to operate out of the church.
I know we just went through establishing a new MOU with my church, Faith Family Church down in Shiloh, to serve as an alternate care site. Do you guys have a dedicated location?
Well, we dedicated location to St. Clair's, and then also we have the Godfrey Prompt Care location. We don't have a MOU with an outside organization. It's all internal for our alternate care.
We have talked about, I think, using daycare. I don't know.
Daycare, we talked about it.
I think what's going on with the kids or whatnot. They've got a building down there that can accommodate.
And what about the resources to supply it? I know a lot of times hospitals, I'll use Memorial Hospital East and like that. It was built as a kind of slender, lean, mean. There's not a lot of space. There's no warehouse to store 25 or 50 cots along with supplies to support for a certain amount of time. Do you guys have?
We have resources from OSF we can always contact. We contact the OSF coming in ministry. We get a lot of help from them, and they have warehouses, different supplies, so they can help us with that as well.
I know you probably talking to Troy, Urban Shroud, and they would give what you got. You know, we would provide what we could. I'd say, let's say you were the epicenter. We do have a surge trail that would have some things. It's not all specific for like inpatient stuff, you know, but we do have those things that we offer for the region. We have vents, we have other pieces of.
Yeah, we looked, definitely looked to you, looked at Madison County, we looked at also West Ministry, so there'd be different resources.
Have anybody ever, have you guys ever tried to set up an alternate care site yet? Have you been here long enough to where you actually went to a facility, put out beds, put out everything?
No.
We want to do it, we have to. We want to.
Yeah, it's something we want to do, but it's just, we haven't done.
So, if anything, everyone that's doing, an exercise, I'm thinking. And that, do that with low threat, just say, hey, we're gonna go to church, we're gonna bring all these cops, we're gonna take pictures, all that type of stuff, get it ready.
There's training coming up for just that topic
Next month.
Which one is that?
Alternate care site. and
Yeah,
shelter
I
operations.
was gonna try to.
So yeah, as a region, we do put on lots of training, lots of training. Lee's been doing a great job at that, getting training scheduled to come in here, and this one is specifically about shelter management and alternate care.
Yeah, I just let everybody know at St. Anthony's, I need to share that more with everyone. There's a lot of training available through the coalition. I haven't done a great job in sharing that, so it's something I need to share more within the hospital.
You guys can also, if you want to, you can join. Yeah, you can always join, just for information only, so you can kind of.
Member planning?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can make that happen and give you guys